On debate, Senator Simons.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank Senator Manning for the intention behind this amendment. But I believe that, if I may say so, the Senator may be conflating two separate issues with Bill C-11. The first has to do with user-generated content created by small social media producers. And I share the concerns of Senator Manning and Senator Housakis that C-11, as it originally came to us, as I explained in my speech for some people who were not here, is that 4.2.2 of the bill, as originally written, was an exception to the exception that had the potential to scope in small YouTubers, small TikTok artists, because the criteria was whether it generated revenue directly or indirectly. That could have been a very small amount of revenue. It could have been revenue that was created not from advertising or subscription, but from sponsorship or from selling products. And so, because I very much shared the concern voiced by Senator Housakis and Senator Manning, Senator Milner-Deschênes and I worked very hard to craft an amendment that surgically removed all user-generated content of this type from the bill. As I explained in my earlier speech, the amended bill that you have before you fixes this problem by removing all revenue thresholds or mentions of revenue and scoping the bill specifically to include commercial content that has that unique identifier number that is only given to commercially released music. If I sing a song on YouTube, and I shall spare you an example, that would in no way have a unique identifier number except perhaps a user content warning. So it would scope in that commercially produced music released by large commercial labels, and it would scope in a rebroadcast, say, for example, a sports specialty channel that rebroadcast a sports game on Facebook. Those would be the only people who are now covered by the bill you have before you. I understand what Senator Housakis is saying, that we have no guarantee that the folks in the other place will accept our amended bill. I would say to you the strongest way to send a message to the government that this amendment is absolutely essential is for us to be united as a chamber in saying this is the correct surgical solution. There's no political blowback. We're not doing this for partisan reasons. We're not doing this to be obstreperous. We're doing this because we listened to 138 witnesses and we came up with a workable compromise. Now we come to the issue of thresholds. I've been taking the time while Senator Housakis was speaking to review the testimony that we actually heard at the Transportation Committee. The threshold issue, as I recall, and as my quick read through the transcripts supports, had never anything to do with social media users. What it had to do with was small streaming services. This remains a concern, because the question is, it's fine that YouTube, or more better for this example, would be the examples of Netflix, Disney, Amazon Prime, Apple TV. They have huge revenues. It's one thing to scope them in. What do you do with a small streaming service from Nigeria that is serving a Nigerian Canadian diaspora population? What do you do about a small streaming service that is offering audio content in Punjabi? What do you do about a small streaming service that is serving an ethnocultural community or a community that has a very specific interest that does not meet a broad general audience? That was what the threshold question was about in debate. It was never about social media users because they would never be captured. Even the most extraordinarily successful YouTube vlogger is not going to be making $150 million or $10 million. In fact, if you think about it logically, this could never have included YouTubers because YouTube makes more than $10 million, makes more than $150 million. This amendment would not protect somebody who is uploading content to a platform like YouTube or TikTok. Our amendment to 4.2.2, which is in the bill now, does that. This threshold would do nothing to protect them because they're on YouTube and TikTok, which have revenues of well over $10 million in Canada. The question that remains is, what do we do about those small niche streaming services? And I thought long and hard before bringing a threshold amendment myself. The challenge was, when we spoke to the experts, is how do you create a threshold that can stay static in legislation? What I would hope for is that the idea behind, the intention behind Senator Manning's amendment, which is not a bad intention, should be encapsulated in regulation. Because I want to say here and on the record that I think it would be ludicrous for a small international streaming service that serves a niche language audience in Canada, a diverse and multicultural country, to be accidentally captured by legislation which is clearly meant to target the largest behemoth streaming services. My final concern about the motion that we have before us is a technical one about the clarity of the language. Now that I have the amendment, it says, regulations shall not prescribe a program of a broadcasting undertaking that generates annual revenues of less than $10 million. And I'm not clear whether the $10 million refers to the broadcasting undertaking or the program. There's a huge difference. So is the intention of this amendment to scope out a program that generates annual revenues of less than $10 million? Or a broadcasting undertaking that generates annual revenues of less than $10 million? If it's the former, almost no program would generate that amount. And if it's the latter, a service like YouTube or TikTok would easily be scoped in, and then this amendment would do nothing to help those social media users that Senator Manning is rightly concerned about. And therefore, I would suggest that this is an unclear amendment that does not do what its avowed intention is. I would suggest to you also that we need to have further discussion to make sure that small niche streaming services are indeed exempted in regulation. And so I thank Senator Manning for bringing forward this amendment, but I will not be able to support it.